One of my favorite parts of the whole thing is going, did you know this? Did you know it was this player? And they were doing this. Like, I really love delivering that information in addition to the great bass lines that I get to talk about.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to play bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. Never too old to groove. For BassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn bass. My guest this week, boy, oh boy, I almost don't know where to start. Paul Thompson is into the bass more than just about anybody I know. Not only is he a teacher of bass, but he's a student of bass, analyzing the bass lines and grooves and technique of darn near every prominent bass player you can imagine. Paul has performed with Maynard Ferguson, Stanley Turrentine, Hubert Laws, Jerry Allen, Bob James, John Pizzarelli, Phil Woods, Billy Porter, and so many others. Currently, he's involved in the Pittsburgh music scene, playing jazz, playing in pit orchestras for musicals. He's also a professor of jazz bass at Duquesne University and at West Virginia University. I would have loved having him as one of my bass professors when I was in school. This is his first time on ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Welcome, Paul. It's great to have you.
It's so great to be here. I want to thank you for having me. And I want to apologize if you hear any bells ringing because I'm at school right now. This is kind of my lunch break. I also teach at the Performing Arts High School in Pittsburgh. I'm an adjunct here, so I don't do a full day, but I do arts instruction to high school kids.
I always liked Pittsburgh. I've got some family roots there. I
Oh,
never
nice.
cared much for your road system, but
No, yeah, I could use some improvement, but
yeah, we used to go there. My grandparents lived there. I had some aunts and uncles there. And then when I was older, I was touring with a Broadway show called Into the Woods. And that was one of the stops that we played. We played at Heinz Hall, as a matter of fact.
yeah, that's a great show. My wife just did that show this past summer. She played the mother of the evil stepsisters.
Okay, that's who. No, that wasn't Cleo Lane's part, was it? Or I don't even remember. This was like 1988, 89.
Uh-huh.
But boy, I remember going back there. It was great. There's that what is it? The incline, the train thing that goes
Yes.
down,
Yes.
oh, the omelets and everything you get at that train station. You're making me want to go back to Pittsburgh. I've been there in a long
Great.
time. And there was a restaurant across the street from the hotel called the Dilly Dally Deli. I don't know if that's still there, but
Oh,
the name
I'm not
has.
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure of that.
And there was another great restaurant called Dingbats. Do you know that one?
Oh my goodness, I totally remember dingbats. Yeah, that they're not around unfortunately anymore.
Well, my Uncle Abe used to tell me about that, but he's not around anymore either. So
Sorry.
let's get into bass and stuff. I
Sure.
genuinely love what you do, and the your love and your passion for the bass just comes through. Tell me about the early days. What about your musical upbringing? How would you describe that, as well as what attracted you to the bass?
Well, I was very fortunate because I'm old enough to have been part of a time when music was kind of part of the general instruction of learning when you were a kid.
You are fortunate.
Yeah, a lot of us, had experience. My earliest lessons were on piano and violin when I was very young, like 5, 6 years old. And I went through a school system where we, could play band instruments and were given choices to do that. And I played trumpet for a number of years. And I actually went to a performing arts school in middle school for visual art. I was very much into drawing and sketching pictures. And my best friend was a drummer at the same school, and he was a young virtuoso. He was amazing. And I started hanging out with him, and he's the guy at age 12, 13 that really got me into music because he was so passionate about it, and I wanted to play with him. And I couldn't play trumpet with him because he was listening to progressive rock. And so instead of the guitar, I thought the bass. Well, one of the reasons I chose the bass is because it only had four strings as opposed to six. So something in my head said that would be easier to pick up and play. But also, he was very much into Rush and Yes and progressive rock, and the bass in those songs is so good and so amazing. So at a young age, I was captivated with Geddy Lee and Chris Squire and players like that. And so when he kind of pivoted into jazz and jazz fusion. I kind of followed him in my early teenage years. He started listening to Return to Forever and Chick Corea, and so I started getting into Stanley Clarke and John Patitucci. And so it seemed like a natural progression. And when he got into fusion, he got into straight ahead jazz and he started loving that. And I kind of followed him. And he kind of opened the door to all this amazing music for me.
Is he still your friend today?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, he just celebrated his 50th birthday this past November. My 50th is coming up next month. But he was in town. He lives in New York. He's an amazing drummer named Paul Wells. He teaches at Juilliard and he plays with the Village Vanguard Orchestra. He plays with Curtis Stigers, the Nighthawks. He does all these great gigs in New York. And people would never know. He's such a great jazz drummer. You would never know that his roots are in like Neil Peart and Rush. But he was amazing then, and he's amazing now. When he was 13 years old, he sounded like he was 30.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
I was lucky.
Now, when I think of Pittsburgh, names like George Benson, Tommy
Yes.
Flanagan,
I'm not sure
uh,
if Tommy Flanagan is from Pittsburgh.
I thought he was. Well, you would know better than I.
I
Well,
think he's Detroiter, maybe.
no, that I would know because I'm
Oh,
a
really?
Detroiter.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard Tommy Flanagan as being a Pittsburgher, but George Benson, Stanley Turrentine, Earl Garner, Ahmad Jamal. I
Wow.
mean, there's a bunch of them. There's a
What about Art Blakey? Was he
Art
from?
Blakey, yes, definite
Okay.
Pittsburgher. Paul Chambers, we claim Paul Chambers because he was born here. He was born
Uh,
in Pittsburgh and then moved to Detroit at a young age.
this interview just took a nosedive. Yeah, well, that's great. Very rich musical heritage. So, what about your career? I mean, you had the passion for it. You had this great exposure to music. You had a love for it. You had some bass influences, some music influences. How did your career get rolling? What type of stuff were you doing initially?
Well, I was really fortunate. Again, I'll say this because I came up during a time when the apprentice system was very, very important if you wanted to learn how to play, especially jazz. You had to find older musicians who were playing live. You had to seek out the music. So when I was a teenager, I started going out to hear these older musicians, and I got a really great stroke of luck because my mother was a teacher and she took a sabbatical. She took a year off and we moved to Chicago for a year, which was my junior year of high school. So I was like 15, 16 years old.
Well, there's also a lot of good music that came out of that little
Oh,
town.
so much. And I hooked up with a guy immediately, one of the great mentors I've had in music. His name is Reggie Willis. And I spent a year, an intensive year that felt like 4 years of college because I came in wanting to like I told him I was a jazz bass player and I was listening to Stanley Clarke and John Patitucci and he kind of laughed at me. He was like, what about Duke Ellington and Monk? And, he really showed me. He had 10,000 records, and I would go over his house every weekend and tape records, and he would give me double bass lessons. It was the most intense year of my life, and he exposed me to the real music and challenged me. Every day, he challenged me. It was like, okay, that's okay, but can you do this? And so after that experience, I came back to Pittsburgh and I started playing with musicians around town, like the great Roger Humphreys, who's a drummer here, who played on Horace Silver's Song for My Father album, one of the best musicians ever. I got in his band and I started playing with him. And a lot of we have such a great jazz scene here in Pittsburgh. I started working a lot with those musicians. And so I got that experience. I was going to college at the same time. And then when I was about 23, I met a guitarist from Ohio who asked me to come and play with him. It was a $50 gig. I was driving an hour and a half away to do this $50 gig. because I really like playing with this guy. And he said, "Hey, I have a friend who plays bass with Maynard Ferguson. He's going to come by and he's going to sit in if that's cool." And I was like, "Yeah." So this guy named Phil Palumbi came by and he
I
sat.
know Phil. I love
You know
Phil.
Phil?
He's a Scott LaFaroist.
Yes. Yeah, he's an expert.
LaFaroite.
Yes. So he came and sat in. This was in the late 90s. He came and sat in and we talked and we really got along with each other and we exchanged information. And then he called me like 2 weeks later. He said, "Hey, man, I'm leaving Maynard's band and I'm going to recommend you for the gig." And I was like, "What?" It kind of blew my mind. And then that happened really quickly. I was with Maynard for almost 2 years. I got to do a record with him. I got to go to like Japan and Europe, and it was just mind blowing the connections I made. And then I pretty much went immediately from that gig into playing with Stanley Turrentine. I
Oh,
did a one off on a break that we had with Stanley, and his wife called me and was basically like, "Can you come play Blues Alley with us in a couple of weeks?" And I said, "Okay, this works out. I can go play Blues Alley and then kind of get catch up with the tour bus."
in Washington, right?
Yes.
I saw
And then,
Pancho Sanchez there on Halloween one year, like 1990 or
oh,
something.
it's one of the greatest venues to hear music. It's so
Yeah,
intimate and wonderful. So I
yeah.
did a week with him, and his wife basically called me after I took the gig. She said, "Can you play the Blue Note? We're going to be there 2 weeks after that." And I had to make a decision to leave Maynard's band, but fortunately they were cool. We had somebody in place who kind of came out. I was able to do one more week in between those two gigs, and we had somebody in place who kind of shadowed me for that week, and then I could leave. So then I joined Stanley, and that was almost 2 years of playing all over the country, like big time gigs, festivals. The Blue Note in New York. I almost played the Vanguard, and he unfortunately had a stroke when we were playing in New York, and passed away. It was very sudden. He was my favorite he still is my favorite tenor saxophonist. So it was like a big dream of mine. And he was him and Maynard Ferguson were both wonderful people. They wanted to talk to you. They wanted to get to know you. Like they were the way they were on stage. Like that's exactly what you got was them. They were cool people. Stanley, I used to get down on myself on gigs about how I played, and he would like try to cheer me up and tell me Coltrane stories. And he called me Youngin. That was his nickname for me, Youngin.
Well, you talk about Maynard. It makes me happy for you, but it brings back some memories for me. I was this close to getting that gig. And I'll tell you what happened. I had a real strong recommendation. A buddy of mine was in the band,
Yeah.
and he recommended me when their bass player was leaving. I don't even remember who was leaving. And there was another guy that got a strong recommendation from the outgoing bass player who had been going over the book with him, and that's why he was chosen. And honestly, I feel now, and I feel back then, I get it. I would have done the same thing. But what was his name? Was Nils, I think. A Scandinavian. Well, let's see. I didn't mean anything derogatory. As
No,
somebody
no,
said
sure.
once, and I heard, speaking to the audience here, um, Nils Johnson or something like that. But anyway, yeah. But I mentioned Maynard Ferguson. My mother is from Canada, and she says
Uh-huh.
Maynard Ferguson. She lived near a place called Crystal Beach, and she said I used to see him on Saturday nights leading a dance band. He was nothing. He was just a local guy there. I said, well, he's something now, Mom. You know?
He was amazing because when we would play the shows, so I was young. I was 23 years old, and most of the people who would come out to these gigs were people who were teenagers in the 70s that loved his music, and they would wear these T-shirts that were 30 years old, and it was like a rock show to them. Like they would leap up out of their seats. We would play the beginning of the theme from Rocky, and they
Yeah.
would jump up out of their seats and start yelling, "Yeah!" And they would scream for things from the audience, "Play MacArthur Park." Like it was crazy. The kind of fans he had were so into the music, and it was so much fun because we played I'm not sure anybody will get to experience what what me and the guys in the band at that time got to experience. We lived on a tour bus for 3 months, 3 straight months, and it was mostly one-nighters. Like it was grueling. You would play in Milwaukee. We would break the whole thing down that night, grab something to eat, get on the bus and sleep all the way to, whatever the next stop was, Minneapolis. You'd wake up the next day, you're in Minneapolis, they get the gear set up, we'd play the next show. Like it was, I was definitely, I couldn't do that now. I could not definitely, like all those one-nighters,
Yeah.
it was pretty grueling, but it was awesome. It was
Was
really
Maynard on the bus too?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
He
No,
slept
Maynard,
there and he was
yes. Oh yeah. He got so I was on the old bus. My first tour was the old bus that was probably in use for 15 years. And the toilet didn't work or anything. And it was rough.
talking like 15, 20 guys.
Oh my, well, this is like 13, 14. But our tour manager,
One toilet on the bus and everybody sleeping
yes,
there, and three
yes.
months. Oh my God.
Our
I
tour
couldn't
manager got a bus license. So he would, when we had like grueling, like one time we had to go from Ohio and we had to be in Arkansas the next day. Him and the bus driver would take shifts. Like he had a bus license. They would share it. But we got a new bus. My last couple tours, we got a new bus. They started leasing a new bus with a room in back. So Maynard boss got the room in back. Very nice. He could lay down and there was a TV and stuff.
Oh, that's
It was a
great.
blast. It was a blast though.
Let's talk about your awesome YouTube channel. How would you describe it? I mean, I could tell the people what it is, but let's have them hear you describe your what is it? PD Bass? Is that what you
PD
call it?
Bass, yeah, that was my username from years back when I first got on YouTube, and I was gonna change it to Paul Thompson when I started really doing content. And the high school kids I teach with, they said, no, 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 don't do it. They said, PD Bass, that's your brand. It fits on a T-shirt. PD Bass. So they urged me, so I never changed it.
What is it? The P I could guess, but what's
Oh,
the
the
D?
D is my middle name. My middle name is David.
That would
So
have been my
PD
guess. My
Bass.
middle name is David also.
Oh, there you go.
Hey,
So PD Bass was kind of something I'd used for emails in the past. Like it was very easy to remember. So I just kept it PD Bass. But I mean, it's things that I'm into. It's evolved over the years I was really inspired mainly by Rick Beato, who's a virtuoso at what he does, and
yeah.
Adam Neely, who is absolutely exceptional. I found myself watching a lot of their videos and thinking, well, I have a story. Like I think I can do that, and I have a different kind of side to that. And I wonder how well it would be received. So if you go back in the history of my channel, I kind of worked with things. I was doing kind of more of a lesson format in the beginning. And then it kind of morphed and the algorithm kind of lets you know, well, I like this. And my first big video was the night fly. I did this half an hour video where I broke down all the bass lines on the night fly. Sorry, I'm at school. I broke down all the bass lines on the night fly, and it was fun. It was a labor of love. I wasn't trying to break the algorithm or anything.
Oh, you're talking about Donald Fagen?
Yeah, that was my first. That was the first video that kind of went viral for me. I did a video maybe 3 years ago where I took all the bass lines on the night fly and I played each one of them, and I provided a little historical background about the bass player who did it and what they were doing at the time.
Anthony Jackson, wasn't it?
Anthony Jackson, Abe Laboriel, Marcus Miller, Will Lee.
Will Lee did
all those guys. But
yeah.
And it's like I've always loved that album because it's like a groove clinic, and all these guys bring their thing. Chuck Rainey's on a track or two, and it's amazing just to listen to each track and break it down. So I did that as a kind of a labor of love, and Will Lee like saw it and he shared it, and it made it like blow up. And that was the first time I was like, wow. So I started experimenting with things, and this is a total true story. I did a gig one night and we played this Sade song, Sweetest Taboo.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a video. I could do a video about this. It's just two notes and I could break down the drums. So I did this short little video and the algorithm was like, yes, this is what we like. And so I'm using my skills as a musician, obviously, because I always want to be able to play the stuff that I'm talking about and give really great examples. But I'm also, the skill set I'm finding I'm using a lot is my music history teacher. So I teach music history here at
Yeah.
this school that I'm at. And I didn't realize that until recently. I'm using that whole skill set because part of my presentation is bringing information that you might not have known about the player or the session or the instrument or the technique, which is my favorite. One of my favorite parts of the whole thing is going, did you know this? Did you know it was this player and they were doing this? Like, I really love delivering that information in addition to the great bass lines that I get to talk about. So
Love it.
that's a long-winded way of me saying I break down basically it's mostly my favorite bass lines and what makes them so great. You know, what makes my favorite bass lines wonderful and why I love them. And I can't talk, it's hard for me to do a video and talk about something I'm not really excited about. Like I know if I'm excited about it, that it's going to be great. I can't. That's why a lot of people make a lot of requests. They're like, please do this, please do this, please do this. And some of them I've actually followed through with. Actually, my newest video, I did a video on a great bass player that people don't talk about named Mick Karn.
Oh yeah, from
Great fretless player. He played with Japan. He
yeah,
did
right, right.
kind of all this progressive stuff. And I never checked him out until, the end of last year. And I was like, this guy's amazing. This is incredible. So I kind of did a deep dive on him. But
He died a few years back, didn't he?
oh yeah, he died in 2011 of
Oh
cancer. He was in his
yeah,
early 50s.
yeah, I
But
remember.
it's been such a great journey. Like, I discover things. If I love something, then there's a lot of work in researching. I have to really, and I want to make sure I'm getting good sources. And if that means I have to read a book, sometimes I'll read a book to do it. I really love podcast interviews. If I want to talk about a bass player and I know there's a podcast where they did an interview, that's a great source of information, or a magazine interview, something written. It's fun for me because I do this hunting and digging to put together the presentation. But I just want to talk about what I think is great music and why I love it, and then kind of give these Easter eggs about
Do
it.
you have a set schedule of how often you publish a video, or do you just do
No, I wish I did because I'd probably have more subscribers and get more views because of my life schedule.
yeah,
I have to try to do it when I can do it. Ideally, so I teach at this school that I'm at now. I'm here 5 days a week, and I'm here 3 hours a day, except for Tuesday and Thursday. I do a full. I'm here from 7:30 in the morning all the way till 3. Then I'm teaching at the two colleges. I teach at the one college on a Monday evenings, and I teach at the other college on Wednesday evenings. And
wow,
then on Tuesday, like tonight, I'm definitely gigging most Tuesday nights. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, those are gigging nights most of the time, and often Sunday. So I have so many gig things happening. I usually break down my process. If I can get 3 days, I know I can get a video out. The first day is a script writing day. The second day is recording music and like getting the track right. And here's a secret. I can't believe I'm going to give this away. I don't record myself playing the track because it's so hard to really nail. I want to nail the audio, that I focus on nailing the audio, and when I nail the audio, then I put the camera up and I do a Milli Vanilli of myself playing, like just playing along with the recording that I did because it's so hard. Some of these bass lines are so hard,
yeah.
and if I put the camera up and try to do it, there's so many takes that I want to focus on nailing it. So that's a day. And then the third day of the process is usually me doing the talking head and then editing, which
I was
which
going to
by the
ask you,
way, I,
you
I
do editing.
love. I love editing. When I hear that people turn their stuff over to an editor, it makes me crazy because that's getting your hands in the dough and making it beautiful. Like that to me is so artistic, and like I get excited when I have a good edit. It's so exciting to me. So
Well, the finished products are just gorgeous. I love your channel. I really love what you do and your passion.
thank
And
you.
when you talk about getting excited about it, as I mentioned at the beginning, that comes right through.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's talk. You're a teacher,
Yes.
you're a professor, you're a performer, you're well steeped. You've got a lot of experience. For Bass Players Only is a bass instruction site. And most of the people that I am attracting are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got some women too, but I've got some students in their 80s. So
That's wonderful.
they're not the same people that you're teaching, but they're also not looking to make a career out of music. They want to play some classic rock riffs with their buddies or some blues shuffles or some walking bass lines. So some want to get a little funky and as we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, sometimes things like arthritis and tendonitis and oh my shoulder, oh my Oi, don't ask me. So I'm just telling you that to give you a context. A lot of times I'll say, you don't have to be Billy Sheehan or Stu Ham or Jocko. You can lay down a super simple bass line and really make the music feel great. But I want to ask you, for somebody like that, what kind of advice can you impart to those people who fit that description and who are just doing it for fun? Maybe they have some time now that they didn't used to have. They grew up, they love classic rock from the 70s, maybe the 60s. So what should they be thinking about? What should they be striving for? What questions should they be asking? What kind of mindset should they have?
Well, let me say that I've worked with several of those, the kind of people that you talk about. I did a bunch of virtual teaching when COVID went down,
Yeah.
and frankly, I kind of burned out on it because I was doing so much of it, and it's hard. It's really hard to virtual teach. I mean, the technology issue, but the preparation that's involved with virtual teaching as well. There's so much preparation. Um, and when I was dealing with classes of 30 kids too, like I just burnt out on it hard.
Oh,
So I'm kind of taking a break. People have reached out to me, by the way, about, hey, can we get a lesson? I'm kind of taking a break from virtual teaching, which isn't to say I'm not going to do it again, but I'm taking a break right now. I've worked with older musicians. There's two things that I think are super important if it's at all in your ability. The first is finding someone where you live, um, to see if you can get in-person instruction. If there's a bass player where you live, if that's possible at all, if you can see someone face to face, rather than rather than watching videos, for instance, that's super important. I find it super important to have that connection with somebody. It could be a guitar player, or a pianist, or a drummer that you're interacting with. But if there's a bass player who has more experience than you, that's a drive away, that you can get a lesson or two with, it's invaluable having time with someone else. The second thing is any amount of reading, I think, will help you. I'm reading so much stuff online right now about people, specifically bass players who aren't professionals, that are trying to play more and learn more, are very reticent about learning how to read music on the staff. And I get a lot of requests for people like they want me to do tab, and I don't do tab on my videos because I've never gotten on a gig and had someone hand me tab. Not yet, anyway. Um, Reading music on any level will only open up your universe. It will make your musical circle bigger and allow you to take more steps. It will open up the whole history of the music to you, and it'll allow you to play with people you never thought you could play with before if you read. And I don't mean like can read the most syncopated odd time. I mean just a little bit of reading ability opens up so much for you. So those are, and reading, especially for people who have gotten to an older age and haven't had to deal with it, I know it's ominous. It seems like this learning how to walk again kind of thing, and it's not. It only takes a few steps, and if you have a good teacher, learning how to read, I found, will really allow you to play with so many people and so many. You can pick up anything. And I like to use Jocko as a reference. Jocko was a genius who couldn't read. He was gigging all over the place. He could already do these incredible things on the bass, and when he started learning how to read, which he did later than most of us, he had to learn how to read. His music just got greater, and he started writing symphonic pieces and learning Bach, and like it just got greater and greater and greater and greater. So those are the two things that I would definitely recommend. Teachers, in-person teachers are the difference for me in my life. Having my college teacher, whose name is Jeff Mangone. We're actually teaching at the same college now. I'm another teacher with him at the college. He changed my life. He was such a great teacher technically with the double bass. And Reggie Willis, who I mentioned before, they made such a difference in my life in person, showing me things, playing me things, and learning how to read, even on a very rudimental level, will change your whole thing. It will open this door that I can't even describe. It's I think those two things are super super important if you want to just take off into the stratosphere.
It's funny because when I started writing books way back, like in the late '80s, early '90s, and I got the deal with Hal Leonard, they published all of my books,
Hmm.
and they said, "Well, you got to have tablature." I said, "Okay." So I have tablature in all my books, and that's just how I was conditioned. And I figured, well, largest print music publisher in the world, I guess they know what they're talking about. So I started putting that on my own online stuff, my digital courses, my online lessons. And then I started to get some feedback from my students. I said, "Your stuff is great. I'm learning so much. Thank you." But I'm taping over the tab. I don't like to see that. And then so I started putting the regular version with tab, and in addition to, not instead of, a tab-free version.
Hmm.
And I got one student in particular down in Florida. "Hey, Joe," and he says, "Hey, this is great, but I'm looking forward to the tab version of this." So now I'm starting to do that for everything. And I tell people, tab is okay if you need to consult it and figure out how to do it in addition to watching my video, but don't rely on that too much as a crutch. Because
Hmm.
I love what you said. You were never handed a chart on a gig that had
Yeah,
tablature.
never. Never, never, ever. And tab also is just an option. I mean, if you know the bass well enough, you could, and that's something I have my students do. Let's play it in another place. Let's do it here. Let's
Yeah.
do it up on the E string. Let's move it around so that we really know the instrument. And if you think about it this way, tab is a chart, just like reading music. It's a chart, it's a graph that shows you what notes to play,
Yeah.
when, and where. And tab is exactly the same thing. You're just reading a graph with numbers instead of dots. Like I see it as a very small step that opens a big door.
Then there's the whole Nashville system. That's a
Oh
whole.
my goodness, that's a whole other, yeah. I read about that in a magazine once, and I was just like, I hope I never have to do this.
Oh,
Fortunately, I haven't.
I haven't either, but I've talked to a lot of people about it. They love it. They love it. Okay,
Mhm.
it works. You're happy. The
Oh,
records sound pretty darn
yeah.
good to me. So.
If you can communicate, and also, I will say, tab doesn't really work for upright bass.
Uh it's the same. I mean, you don't have frets, obviously, but yeah, kind of can. I mean, I have some upright lessons on my sites, and
Did you do
you know,
tab on them?
I think I do actually.
Oh my God, I have to see that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play a G on the E string, a low G there, well, that there'd be a three under there. I mean, that's where I don't know why. Maybe at the time I did it, I didn't know how to do it without tab. I don't know, but I don't know. I guess that's some uniqueness I have. Hey, what about you get such a great sound out of your basses on
Oh,
your
thank you.
Tell me about your basses and your gear and your, amps and strings and effects
I'm
and
sorry I don't have my I'm sorry we're not doing this and I'm at home and I could just hold things up. But I've always believed in getting a really great bass sound passively. And especially recently, um I would say 80% of my videos you are hearing a passive bass plugged right into Logic with a little bit of compression and that's it. The benefit to that is when I'm EQing and I'm trying to get it to sound a certain way, I'm rolling off the extreme low end and I'm rolling off some of the extreme high end. And I might bump it in the middle just a little bit because I'm thinking about people listening on their phones
yeah.
and I want it to really come through. But I'm a student of the Marcus Miller kind of school. Put some nice Anthony Jackson, put some nice fresh strings on there, have a super clean fat sound that's not colored. I've never been a pedal guy, unfortunately. If I need an effect, I'll usually go on YouTube and see what's on Logic. If somebody is, or go on Talkbass or Reddit.
Yeah.
How do I make my bass sound like this? Not an effects guy, but I have some great basses. Probably the bass I've used the most in my videos is a Fender Geddy Lee that I got off a student of mine.
Yeah.
I had a high school student who had like 5 basses come in with this Geddy Lee
Wow.
several years ago, and I played it and I fell in love with it. And not just because I love Geddy Lee, I was just like, this bass is amazing. So I traded him. A much more expensive bass that was a 5 string. So
Wow.
he totally got the better end of the deal. But that Geddy Lee, I put a Sadowski preamp in it, and like I said, in most of the videos, I pull up the notch and it's passive. That's the one bass, and I try to make sure I have fresh strings on it. I like to use Dunlop on that bass. I like the Dunlop Marcus Miller Super Brights to really give me I like a super crispy sound. I have a 6 string that I've used in some of my videos that was custom made for me by another bass player in town
Wow.
who worked with me. It was a fun bass to put together because he let me design the shape and where the pickups would go and pick the electronics, and he put beautiful wood into it. A guy in town named Willie Franklin, who's another bass player. He built that bass for me. The fretless bass that I use is a parts bass. It was all Warmoth that I actually put together when I was probably 19 years old. So I've had it over 30 years. It's Warmoth neck, Warmoth body, EMG pickups when I was 21, I read the Jocko biography by Bill Milkowski, and I ripped all
Got
the
it right over there on the shelf. I could see it.
Yes. I was young enough that I ripped all the frets out of that bass.
Yeah.
I ripped all the frets out,
Put
and
the
then I
boat epoxy in.
went to a boat store. I said, "Can you give me something called epoxy resin?" And they handed me 2 containers. They said, "Mix this with this." And then I painted the neck over 2 or 3 days. I gave it a couple coats, and that's been my fretless. And I have other things. About a year and a half ago, I thought I wanted to talk about things with P basses. I want a precision, so I went and just got a really nice American Standard precision. What else do I have? I have another Warmoth parts bass that's kind of a 5 string that I haven't really used in my videos, but I use on live gigs a bunch. And I think that's all my elect. Oh, and I have a Music Man Sterling.
Oh
Um,
yeah, those
uh,
are fun
it's a Sterling by Stingray.
for
Kind of,
slapping.
yeah. It's kind of the overseas kind of version of a. They have like a really inexpensive bass that they're making now that's really high quality. It's great. The neck feels outstanding. I use that when I need Music Man kind of sound.
Yeah.
And my upright bass is a Pullman. It's a gorgeous Pullman from 1972 that I lucked into about 10 years ago. That's a really it's not a super special instrument, but it's built like a rock. Like it's a tank, which is with the amount that I do gigging, I don't need a bass that's going to crack every January. I need a tank. I need something that can go in the cold, that's going to sound good, can take a bump every once in a while if it has to, and still give me a good sound. So
What kind of pickup do you have on that Pullman?
I have a Fishman full circle. I like the full circle.
Ah,
To be honest with you, I love the realist as well. I love the
pretty
David
neat.
Gage realist, but some of the gigs that I do, the Fishman, hearing the bass, that little mid bump that it gives you, is invaluable because in some situations, especially when people are talking, I still do like I work. I do working gigs, background wallpaper gigs where the whole room is talking and I want to be able to hear the bass without killing my hands. And the
Yeah.
Fishman really, it can give me that really warm acoustic thing, but it can also cut through if I need to be heard on a gig. So I love using that pickup, and I've been switching. I played French bow all through high school, and then my college teacher said, "Yeah, I don't do that. I play German. You're going to switch to German." So I switched to German, and I played German for 15 years. And I had a student come to me who wanted to study, and he said, "I don't play German. I play French. We have to do French." So I picked up the French again, and I was like, "I forgot how much I love this." So I went back to playing French, and then recently I've been kind of messing with the German again. So I feel like I'm a switch hitter as far as bows. Like I'm
When I was a beginner, I went to Max Janowski, played in the Detroit Symphony,
yeah.
and he says, "French bow or German bow?" I said, "Huh?" He says, "Okay, German bow. That's what I'm going to have you play." And to this day, I can't get comfortable with a French bow. When I pick up a French bow, I hold it like a German bow.
Oh, really? It's just there's so much more finesse in what your
Yes.
thumb is doing with it.
You can't dig in as deep, Bill. You can't.
No, but that's the whole point of it is that to try not to dig in too deep. I'm finding so using the French bow again for several years.
Geez, look
My
at those
thumb,
big hands, man.
no, I have no. These are tiny.
Well,
I
yeah, I guess
found
you're
my
right in front of the camera, so yeah.
yeah. My thumb. I'm having problems with my thumb when I play electric bass now. I find that it wants to curl up like I'm playing a French bow.
Well, you're going to be 50, it's
Well, yes, those problems happen.
yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm going back to German is because I don't want my thumb collapsing like that anymore.
What kind of amps do you play through?
I've had the same 3 amps probably for almost 20 years. I have an Epiphany 310 that I love, one of the light ones that's incredible. I have a Mark Bass 210, which is the skinny one.
Yeah.
That's been my main cabinet for almost 20 years, I would say. And I have a Walter Woods blue light.
I knew you were going to say Walter
It's a
Wood.
it's a 1500 watt. That thing is like thump you in the chest. Although I recently bought another head. I bought one of those PV mini maxes.
Oh,
It was
yeah, yeah.
really inexpensive. It's like 600 watts because I really want for some of my gigs, I just wanted a little head that I could just grab and kind of put in my bass case. The bass heads now are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I wanted something micro so I could get in and out of some of the gigs that I do. But
Uh,
the Woods is in fact, I asked a couple people about this. I would love to do a video on the Walter Woods bass head because it's so iconic, but I don't know what Walter's health is like right now. People have had trouble getting in touch with him.
I've had trouble getting in touch with him. I have a Walter Woods. I bought it from him in 1980.
Oh my God. Have you had it serviced?
I did, and yeah, because I guess the way it was constructed at the time, I think technology has changed. I was doing a theater gig in
Hmm.
Miami Beach, and I guess I turned on the amp and I turned up the volume, but the speaker was not plugged in.
Uh-huh.
And a friend of mine says, "Oh man, that's like putting your car in neutral and flooring it." So I don't know, something went wrong. I had to send it
Oh
in. He fixed it, send it back. And I had met him. I was at his house one time
my gosh.
in the LA area, but this was like, I don't know, 1988 or something. That's super, super nice guy. and I've tried reaching out to him, and I
Mhm.
guess as far as his health goes, I don't know what the deal was, but one time I got a greeting on his voicemail. Hi, it's Walter. Now's the time. You can leave a message for me, meaning like I wasn't okay, but I'm better now, or I'm okay now.
Oh,
And
wow.
still have not been able to reach him. So I don't know what's up with him, but I've had that amp I bought in 1980, and my mother just about fell over when I told her what I paid for it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, totally worth it, though.
Oh,
Totally worth it.
it's the only amp I've had since
Yeah.
1980. Oh,
So good. You know, it's funny, and bass players know about it. So I'm kind of friends with Christian McBride,
oh
and
yeah.
he comes into town sometimes, and he's used my gear. And one time we did a double bill. We did a show where I played the first half and he played the second, and he has all these endorsements and stuff. And they brought in all this gear he was supposed to use from the rider, and I went, I got a Walter Woods, man. You want to play it? And he looked and he went, yeah, I'll use that. Like, yeah, I know about the woods. I'm gonna use the woods.
Yeah. I love it. It's not that powerful. I think it's 100 watts RMS, but if
Mhm.
you play in a big place, they'll
Right.
probably have a backline, or sometimes they just have in ears they won't even have, and they'll put
Yeah.
you through the house system. So, but back in my heyday of touring, it was always either a Galleon Kruger 800 RB
Uh-huh.
or an SVT, with the
Uh-huh.
big, I don't know, like 610s in it or something, whatever it was, those tall.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Hey, what about the future? You've done a lot. You're still a young man, and as I see you, what else would you like to do that you haven't already accomplished? Or is there something that you have in the works now, or something that you haven't gotten around to yet? What else would you like to do?
There's so much. I feel like the YouTube thing has just been kind of my first step, and it's given me a lot of confidence that I didn't have before. Um, but definitely I want to do an album at some point. I want to do a solo album, and I'm still, turning those things around in my head. At one point, I wanted to do it when I turned 50, and I was going to call it 50, but 50 is going to be here really soon. So it's going to have to be 51 or 52. I want to do a solo album. I would love to write a book. I'm finding that when I teach, there are a lot of things that I've come up with on my own to facilitate my students' learning, especially with jazz. I found that I've come up with a lot of what seem to be original approaches to learning how to walk over turnarounds, how to use drops, that I just haven't seen published in other kind of places. I would love to write a book, and I don't want it to be. I'm very old fashioned. I don't want it to be kind of a course where it's like, come to my website and get this PDF. I would love to. I'd love for it to be an actual book. Um, I would love to keep doing what I'm doing and having it get better on YouTube. My challenge is every video I'm trying to learn something new and get better. Whether it's lighting that you see, and if you've seen my videos lately, I finally got some tube lights and I have color behind me. And when I first did that, I was like, this is amazing. I tried a new camera at one point that didn't really work out, but I'm trying new things with my videos. I'm trying new subjects. I'm trying new ways of shooting. I want to constantly grow and keep teaching. I'm finding that YouTube, again, is an extension of me as a teacher. That's what people come to my videos for. They want to learn something, and I feel like maybe I'm teaching you something and pointing you in the direction of some great music. But I want to grow in those kind of aspects, and I feel like I still have a lot of, I'm going to be 50 in 3 weeks, 3 weeks from today. I feel like I have so much more to do, and I'm just getting started. Like, I have so much more. I want to meet my heroes. I want to meet Rick Beato and tell him how much he's influenced me and thank him for his videos. I've already met, I met the maestro, Ron Carter. We had a wonderful Zoom, and he told me he watched my videos, which totally blew my mind completely. That was one of the greatest conversations of my life. I'm meeting people. I got a great message the other day from Tracy Wormworth, who saw a video I did on her, to actually interact with these people. It's like a dream come true. I feel like I'm 20 years old again, and like things are just starting to happen. So, I mean, that's just a long-winded way of me saying I'd love to do an album. I'm gonna do an album at some point, and
Good.
I'd really love to write a book at some point. I'd love to have a publish something with my name on it, and here's my book. Those
Yeah.
are two huge goals. But I want the YouTube thing to, I want it to get better. I want to just keep getting better at it. I want to keep trying things and keep experimenting and keep growing and having fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Ah, that's great. That's the most important part, I guess.
Hmm.
It's funny. I want to say this whenever it's appropriate because I was saying I'm thinking about it, or maybe I'm going to do a record. I'm going to do an album. And it's
Yes.
funny because I've interviewed over 800 bass players. And I say, well, what would you like to do? And so many of them say, well, I've played with so many other people, but I've got enough material of my own that I want to do an album. And then they all say the same thing. Almost all of them say, but it's not going to be one of those bass records. I hate bass records. I just interviewed Mark Egan like 2 days ago or whatever it was the other day, last week, and he does the same thing I do. I've got my phone and I come up with an idea, or a lot of times I'll
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and there'll be something going through my head. Paul McCartney got lucky doing that with Yesterday, but
Yeah.
anyway, I'll sing it into what's called voice memos. And then
Yes.
I'll develop it later, and I got a few and a few more and a few more. But I've got a bunch of tunes I wrote back in the '80s, and then I've got a lot of stuff, and I have a few dream people that I'd like to be on the recording, and I'm not at liberty to mention any names. Most importantly, because I haven't spoken to any of them, so they don't even know that I'm thinking about them. But yeah, but I think that's great. I encourage you to do it. Hey, let's get in each other's faces and say, hey man, how's your record? Oh, how's your
Yeah.
record? How's your
No, totally. Let's do it. Let's
Let's
do it.
do it.
You know what I think the important thing is that now that you mention that, it's been this ominous, like we grew up with like Jaco Pastorius, or John Patitucci, right? Those iconic first bass debut albums. And in our head, we're like, oh my God, this has got to be good. It's got to be show of hands. It's got to be, and if it's not that, it's awful. And one thing that YouTube has taught me, probably the most important lesson, is to do it and get rid of it. And it's gone. There it is. I don't time my video releases. As soon as I'm done editing, most often at 1 in the morning, the video goes up and
Yep.
I go, goodbye. That's it. It's gone. It's gone. And I think an album has to kind of be like that. It's got to be this collection of things. You put it together, you do it, and then you go, good luck to you. That was that moment. I'm on to the next thing.
Find that with your book too when you do it. And there's one thing that I find myself saying, but there's a little bit of a caveat. I hear this a lot. Done is better than perfect. But somehow when it comes to music, but then I think, well, Miles Davis had a few clams,
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the moment. And I've had other musicians tell me, yeah, when you do a record, it's about that day or those days, and it's a snapshot. It's like taking a picture. My hair looks kind of messed up, but that was that
yeah.
day. So that's
Well,
what
the other
it's
thing
really
is
about.
if you're not hitting all the right notes when you listen back and but if the feeling is there and the energy is there, that
Yep,
overrides the good outweighs the bad. Hey,
absolutely.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music.
Whew. That's a good question. I know that when I was very young, marine biology always appealed to me. Something that required a lot of study. I know I would be doing something similar and that I would be studying something a lot that was very detail oriented. So, kind of knowing things, marine biology, archaeology, those kind of things, something scientific. But I also know that computer, like and editing and like those things, that was so much. That's so much fun to me, and it kind of came quickly that I might be doing something like that, something in that arena where I'm working on a computer and being very, I don't know, I'm very in almost a kind of an OCD kind of way, detail oriented. Little details really work well for me, which is why it's funny. My wife and I fit so well together because she's not that at all. I'm the read every page of the manual when I get something guy,
Yeah.
and she's the just take it out and plug it in and just fire it up and we'll figure it out. I like details. I like little details and studying things. So probably something like that.
You two must drive each other crazy.
We often do. Yes, she's an actress, believe it or not.
Okay.
How smart was I? Jazz musician marrying an actress.
Yeah, there you go. I studied music at University of Miami, so I
Mhm.
know they had a good oceanography program or marine biology, whatever it was. So my mind went there when you mentioned that. There are probably other schools that don't. I bet there's no good school for that in Arizona.
I'm sure.
But I was thinking Pittsburgh. Well, you got all those rivers there. So.
Yeah,
Do you know where
yeah. I
Kittanning
might
is?
be. Pardon me?
Kittanning, Pennsylvania. Do you
Oh,
know?
of course. Yes.
Only
Yeah,
people
we
from
love
Pittsburgh
Katanning.
have heard of. Yeah, my father grew up there.
That's like northeast.
My father grew up there, and I remember going there when I was a little kid. It was like a half a mile wide and 3 miles long or something. Little tiny container. Well, this has been great, Paul. I know you're on your lunch hour, and I know the kids are waiting for you. And since you're doing this on your lunch hour, you probably haven't had time to eat any lunch. So
Who
I,
needs to eat?
I, I know. Thank you so much. I really, really love what you do with your YouTube channel and how you just teach so much about the bass and things that people don't know or people wouldn't have thought about. And they're entertaining, they're educational, your videos. And I just love them. And judging from the popularity of your YouTube site, I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people that also love them. So thank you so much for joining me. Much luck and continued success to you always.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true pleasure, and I hope we get to do it again at some point.
I will look forward to that. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created for BassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. For BassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn bass. Thank you very much to my special guest once again, Paul Thompson. I will see you all right here next week, same time, same place for BassPlayersOnly.com. In the meantime, let's play bass.